Hi guys, welcome to the International Trade course. Today, we will start off the course with the introduction and overview of international trade. Today's lesson will be very basic, covering the concept of international trade and the gravity model. There are four learning objectives in today's lesson. I hope that by the end of this lesson, you should be able to explain first, what is international trade? Second, why we need to study international trade? Third, who trades with whom? Basically, who doing business with whom? And the last one, the changing pattern of world trade. But before we go further on the concept of international trade, let us understand what is trade first. Trade refers to the process, exchange of goods or services between two or more parties. All of us experienced this concept before in many different ways. Before the emergence of monetary or currency value, we had the barter system. Actually, we still have it too. Did you ever exchange something with your siblings or friends with the goods or services that you have? Let's say, exchange some candies with other snacks such as chocolate with your siblings or friends? Or maybe you exchange for some toys or some food with your parents, but your parents will say that you will get a slice of pizza if you wash the dishes now. Or maybe if you help me to wash my car, I will let you play 2 hours of computer games. Something like that. If yes, then that's the basic and simplest form of trade, barter system. Here, the diagram shows that two people, one with meal and one with a pair of shoes. Trade only happens between these two people if both of them wants and agree to exchange their meal and shoes with one and another. However, it is very difficult to find someone that want to exchange with the good that you have or with the good that they have. With the emergence of currency and monetary system, people now can get whatever they want based on their limit and capability. So, with money in terms of cash or card, people can get their meal that they want. Simply said, the seller will receive money in cash or card in return for the meal that they sell it. So, we have discussed the concept of trade. Now, how about international trade? Same as trade, but only in international context, that is, between countries or across countries. Goods and services are allowed to be exchanged throughout the world. So we can conclude that international trade enables the exchange of goods or services between and across countries around the world. However, we have to understand that international trade represents a mutually beneficial transaction between buyer and seller. Remember what I said, that it has to be mutually agreed and consent to be exchanged on the system barter. There will be no exchange if there is no beneficial between the buyer and seller. Hence, it is very important that the transaction between buyer and seller would be beneficial. So, buyers represent to the consumer who buy imports, and seller refer to the firms that export the goods will find this trade beneficial because consumer can get many choice of goods and services through imports, and seller of course able to gain profit by selling not only domestically but also internationally. However, trade is predicted to benefit country as a whole, but may also harm particular groups. Why? Just a very simple example. Trade will provide more choices of goods and services, because goods and services not only from domestic market but also from the international market, the one that imported into the country. But the imported goods, the one that bring into the country, will become a competition on the same goods produced by the local or domestic producer. We will discuss further on this in the next lesson. Here, a simple example on how international trade works between two countries. A very simple one, Malaysia and Switzerland. Malaysia is commonly known as a country rich in natural resources such as cocoa bean, palm oil, rubber, and many more. So, what do you think that Malaysia will export to Switzerland? Malaysia export cocoa bean to Switzerland, which cocoa bean can't be grown in Switzerland due to its climate and weather. So, Switzerland has to get it from somewhere else, from those countries that are able to grow and plant cocoa bean. And why Switzerland has to import cocoa bean from Malaysia? Because Switzerland is the main chocolate producer in the world, and the key ingredient to chocolate production is cocoa bean. And Malaysia import chocolate from Switzerland, a very well-known brand, Ferrero Rocher and Toblerone. So we can see that international trade benefits both countries. Now we will move to the next learning objective. Why we study international trade. Simply said, we can see that from the Malaysia and Switzerland example because it benefits both countries. Hence, we study international trade. Let us use the same example of Malaysia and Switzerland. As I said, Switzerland has to import because they are unable to grow and produce cocoa bean due to the climate and weather of the country. And cocoa bean only able to be grown in certain country, usually Southeast Asia country like Malaysia. Whereas Malaysia, of course, able to grow and plant plenty of. Moreover, with the inherent resources, the resources born around the countries, it also enables specialization in the country. Simply said, countries able to export on goods which they have plenty of resources, and this enable them to specialize in producing the goods of the same resources that they have in the country. Let us see based on two examples. One, based on Saudi Arabia export composition. We can see that from this diagram, more than half of the Saudi Arabia export is based on petroleum. It is not surprising because we know that Saudi Arabia is well known for the oil reserve and production in the country. It's due to their location. The country is rich with the oil resources. How about a country that they do not have any natural resources? Can we assume that they are not going to do any trade? No, we can see that from the Switzerland example, they don't have the ability to grow or plant cocoa bean, yet they're able to produce well-known chocolate such as Ferrero Rocher and Toblerone because they have the skill or technology in producing high quality chocolate. So here is another example, Japan. Japan might not well known due to its natural resources, but Japan is well known due to its technological development. The country are very famous in terms of automotive and electronic industry. So we can see that from this diagram, the country export a lots of car and electronic components because the country have a high capability in terms of technology in car and also electronic industry. So we also can say that with international trade, more choices of goods and services. We can have more choices, for an example, in terms of mobile phone. We can get Apple from the US, we have Huawei from China, we have Samsung from Korea. If we don't have international trade, we might not able to enjoy variety brands of mobile phone. Very simple. Everything is possible now due to international trade. And we will talk about the pattern of trade in specific, why certain countries are good in producing certain goods or services. We talk about this in terms of Malaysia and Switzerland example, why Malaysia are very good in producing cocoa bean. It is due to the natural resources available in the country. The climate enabled the country to grow plenty of cocoa bean. And why did Switzerland very good in producing chocolate? Because they have the technology of it. They have the research and development in terms of producing chocolate. Who sells what to whom is also very simply being explained using the Malaysia and Switzerland example. Malaysia sells cocoa bean to Switzerland. Malaysia are not going to sell cocoa bean to countries that also able to grow plenty of cocoa bean, such as Indonesia. There is no point to sell it to Indonesia when they have plenty of it, unless they have less cocoa bean to be consumed domestically, which means that the demand more than supply, then Malaysia can export or sell the cocoa bean to Indonesia. But simply the idea is we sell it to those that are unable to produce it by themselves. Like Switzerland, they are unable to produce cocoa bean by themselves, hence they have to import from Malaysia or other countries that are able to produce cocoa bean. Now we are on learning objective 3. Who trades with whom? This will be discussed using the gravity model. The gravity model based on the analogy to Newton's law of gravity. Newton explained that gravitational attraction or the pull between any two objects is due to the product of their masses, their size, and diminishes with distance. In terms of trade, the product masses refer to the country economy size or GDP and geography distance between one country to another country. Gravity model emphasize on size and distance as important trade determinants. These two are the key underpinning idea of the gravity model. Now, let's have a look on the illustration on the gravity model. Again, bear in mind, size and distance are important for trade in the gravity model. So, let's assume that there are three countries based on this illustration. Yellow country, green country, and blue country. Now, we want to see which country that blue country want to trade with. In terms of size, we can see that yellow country is bigger than the green country. And we also can see that the yellow country has the shorter distance with the blue countries, whereas the green country has larger distance compared to the one with yellow country. So, simply said, the blue country will be pulled towards yellow country than the green countries. Or you can say that the blue country are more attracted to the yellow country rather than the green country. Why? Because the yellow country is larger in size and also closer in terms of distant. Based on the gravity model, we can say that size of an economy has a positive relationship with trade. That is, the bigger the size, such as the yellow country, the larger the trade between the yellow country and the blue country. Whereas the distance has a negative relationship with trade. That is, the shorter the distance, the larger the trade. So we can see that the blue country is closer to the yellow country. Therefore, the trade will be bigger than the trade between the green country and the blue country. All in all, the gravity model emphasizes on the size of the two countries' economy, that is the GDP, and the distance between the two countries, whether they are close or far between each other. We emphasize on large economy or larger economy. Why? Larger economies tend to produce more goods and services, so they're able to sell more in the export markets. At the same time, larger economies tend to spend large amount on imports because they have large income. Why they have large income? Because they're able to sell more in the export market. They're able to generate high incomes from the export market, hence they have large income to spend on import. This is why trade is very concentrated among developed countries. Basically, 50% of current world trade is between developed economies, whereas only 12% of the current world trade is between developing economies. So we can see that why basically economy of the world is being conquered by the developed countries. Now, let's see how we can apply the gravity model into a real situation. First, based on this diagram, let's see the biggest economies in the world. We can see that the US ranked number one. So, based on the gravity model, we're going to see who will most likely become the trading partner for the US. It would be either China or Japan, since they rank number 2 or number 3 in the top 10 world biggest economy. Now, let's see the right diagram, which show that Canada ranked number 1 as the most important trading partners to the US. But if we go back to the initial diagram, the left diagram, Canada ranks number 10 in the top 10 world biggest economy. Or we can say that the last one under the top 10, not number 2, not number 3, but number 10. Also, when we see from the right diagram, the America most important trading partner, Mexico ranked number 3 as the important trading partner to the US. However, Mexico is not even in the top 10 biggest economy list at all. We can see that under the top 10 list, there is no Mexico at all. Yet, under the America most important trading partners, Mexico come up number 3, even higher than Japan, Germany, which these two basically have larger economies than Mexico. So, it shows some anomalies that is not in line with the gravity model that emphasize on size. While size is important matter for trade, we can see that China and Japan as the second and third largest economy in the world. We expected that China and Japan will be the top trading partner to the US. Yes, they are the top trading partner to the US, but they are not number 1 or number 2 or top 3 because Canada and Mexico rank number 1 and number 3 as the largest trading partner of the US. Why? First and foremost, both Canada and Mexico are closest to the US. Basically, Canada, Mexico, and US, they are neighboring countries. They're located in the same region and they are just beside one and another. Second, Canada has strong cultural affinity due to common language. They speak in the same language, English, and they also have the history of migration. Okay, so basically, due to their neighboring countries, basically Canadian migrated to the US and the American also migrated to the Canada. And the third reason, Mexico has low cost advantage in terms of labor, raw materials and land. Due to the close location between US and Mexico, Mexico relocated many of its manufacturing facility to the Mexico because everything costs lesser in Mexico than in the US. So now let's see the main trading partners for Malaysia. We can see that except for the US, the other four countries, China, Singapore, Japan, and Thailand, are located closer to Malaysia. So, distance is very important too. Of course, distance is mentioned in the gravity model, but mainly being overshadowed by the size because size is the first and foremost important things to be looked at when who trades with whom. So we can say that other things besides size also matter for trade. Distance, which we have talked about that, why distance is very important? Because it influences transportation costs and therefore the cost of imports and export. Second, cultural affinity. We can see based on the Canada and the US example, they are very close in terms of cultural similarity, in terms of language, in terms of history of migration. Therefore, they are most likely to trade with one and another too. And this is the case applied to Malaysia and Indonesia. We are very similar in terms of the culture, hence we also have a very strong economic ties and also trading between Malaysia and Indonesia. Third, geography. Ocean harbors and a lack of mountain barriers make transportation and trade easier. It is very hard to trade when there is so many mountain barriers and there is no proper port. The next one, multinational corporation. Corporation or subsidiaries spread across different countries. Hence, it might influence the import and export between their division or subsidiary. And the last one, borders. This is very important because borders basically define the territory of one country to another countries. When there is a borders, they will have formalities. How one border going to cross to another borders. And remember, trade will involve crossing borders. Therefore, it also involves formalities and sometimes it might not be allowed to cross borders. Hence, will influence export and imports. Now we reach the last part of today's lesson, the changing pattern of world trade. So the main question is whether the world has become smaller or not. Previously, it was very difficult to travel or communicate with one country from the other side of the globe. Simply to say that due to time and place differences, it's very hard for you to reach for your friends or the other counterpart in the world. However, the world indeed has grown smaller over time due to modern transportation and communication. Previously, it might take 5 hours from point A to point B, but due to modern transportation, it might only take 1 to 2 hours. It might not even take days, it just takes hours. And due to modern communication as well, we can in contact, in touch with people from different time zone instantaneously, simultaneously. We no need to depend on the letter to be sent and to reach the other side of the world for so many days or even months. We can communicate instantly, directly, simultaneously, even with time differences or distance. Therefore, everything becomes easier and more reachable than ever before. So, trade can be conducted easily regardless on time differences or distances. Here we're going to see the changing composition of developing country export. So we're going to start with the blue line. We can see that developing countries emphasize or focus on agricultural products rather than manufactured products, but it showed a very steep decline on 1980s, where now we're going to see the red line, the rise of manufactured product at the same time. Why everything began on the 1980s? We can say that this is the time that the modern transportation and communication arise or developing. It's getting better in terms of transportation, it's getting better in terms of communication. Industrialization is happening. Therefore, agricultural product is decreasing, whereas the manufactured product increasing. And remember, manufacturing is closely related to technology. That's why when there is modern transportation communication related to technology, manufactured product also getting developed and increased. This diagram shows the composition of world trade in 2015. We can see that more than 50% are manufactured goods, whereas only 8% on agricultural product. So we can see that the world trade relied heavily on manufactured goods rather than agricultural products. And we can see that this pattern or this composition will remain the same for the next few years ahead because of globalization, because of technology enhancement, because of modern transportation and also communication. So that's all for today's lesson. Thank you very much and see you in the next class. Bye bye.